Alright guys, today the beloved Ashman is going to show you how to create armies for Ultimate Battle 2. Now I get to ask this question. Nobody really wants to start because they don't know how to create an army. And creating an army is kind of fun and part of the game because you can do it offline. You don't have to be sitting there where somebody is watching you do it. So the first thing to do about editing an army is you want to have your own armies to edit. So what I want you to do is to go down and click where that big white arrow is on Edit Armies. Alright, you're going to get this dialog box. On the far left is for creating an army from scratch. I do not suggest that. What I would do is to follow the method I'm going to use, and that will allow you to get your army quickly made. And after that, if you want to go back and fool around with making custom anything, you can do that on your own time. But the fastest way is you're going to get this dialog box that comes up, and at the very first time, excuse me, it's going to be blank since you haven't created any armies yet. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this list. And one unique thing about this game is you can actually search my armies. If I put Randy's Ratkin up there, if you search Randy's Ratkin, you can actually find all the models that I use in my Ratkin army, which is kind of nice if you're trying to work on an army quickly. Now you're going to get this nice dialog box. If you're on a blank screen, all you're going to get is the plus. Otherwise, you're going to get all the other armies you've created in front of it or before. And so what you want to do to create a new army, obviously, is to go down and click on the plus. Alright, obviously you want to give your army a name in order to put units into your army. So now how do you get units for your army? The absolute easiest way is to search other people's armies. In the search dialog box, you could put in there, for example, orcs, you could put dwarfs, you can put whoever this guy's stuff is, infernals, dwarves, and that will bring up all their icons. And so all you have to do is steal their icons to create your first army. And after that, you can go hog wild, once you learn how to do this step. But I would just use other people's icons at first in order to get into the game very quickly, as opposed to messing around with trying to create these icons. But like I said, icon creating is kind of fun, but it's very time consuming, and so this is a way to get you in the game quick. So in this case, I found an orc boar chariot that I want to use for my army. And so what I want to do is to steal their model is I want to go down here and hit clone. And clone, it just allows you to use the model that somebody else has already designed. And that's a very nice model there. So this would definitely be one I would want in my army. Alright, so then you'll get this handy dandy clone dialog box. And obviously I want an orc boar chariot. I'm going to put it in my orc army. But the unique thing about this game is you can actually put the models in any particular list that you want, because if you want to make something else out of them eventually, or color them differently to make them your own, it doesn't matter where you put them. But in this case, I do want to put them in my orc army, so I just simply click on orcs. Alright, this part might be a little tricky to some. Do you notice the gold star that is actually in your dialog box there? You have to create your new units, you have your army list, you can search other army lists. If you search army list and find one that you like, all you have to do is click on the gold star on that army list, and then that army list will stay in your gold star menu. And that way you could still, instead of searching for it every time you want to get a new model off of it, you just save a whole bunch of other folks' army list. That way it kind of gives you a library, so to speak, of models, so that you can keep creating your army. And like you can see mine there, and I just, whenever I need a image, I just go into that list, and I'm sure I'll find an image in that list that matches one of my guys. So that's a hint to this game, is to keep track of other people's armies and just make them your favorites, and that gives you a library for the future instead of having to search every time. And like I said, this is kind of tricky, but it gives you like I said, it gives you the ability to steal models whenever you need them and help create your army list very quickly. Something that I don't personally do, but if you see an army list that you like, of course, make it your favorite by clicking on the gold star in the upper right hand corner. You can also go to the bottom and set it as default, and then that way you can just pull models straight out of their army list even during the game. And so that's kind of handy if you want to deploy what I call from the table. as opposed to on the table, which is the way I'm going to show you how to deploy. But it's also a quick way. If you forget a model, you can come in here, set it as default, and then add it to your list when you're in the game in case you forget something. So you have to kind of mess around with it to see the use for it. But once you get it, I mean, once you do it one time, you'll remember it forever. All right, after you've obtained all the models you think you need in your army, what you're going to do is go over to the left menu there, select the army that you want to play that particular day, and set it as default. And that way, when you go to the deployment stage in the actual game table itself, that will be the icons you can select from. So right now, you can see all the models that I have, and I've just brought them into my list, and I've edited them. I've done whatever I want to them, and you can always go to this edit step and edit units, which is kind of nice. But right now, what I'm going to do to get to the game quick is I've used everybody else's models. I've cloned them all into my list, and now I'm going to set that as default. People ask me all the time how I deploy my army all at once, and this is what the whole tutorial is about: is to speed up the setup of the game. Otherwise, it just takes a while sometimes, and oftentimes, if you can set your army up all at once, it's more fair than having everybody deploy what I call off the list or off the table. So this way you put all your models out there and the other guy sees what you have in your army, can ask questions about it, and you can discuss anything that, hey, is that labeled correctly or whatever, and then you could fix anything that's incorrect, obviously, even during the game. So I like doing it this way. I don't really like the off the table method because it's always like pulling stuff out. Like, you don't know how many drops they have, and if you've ever played on the table, with regular miniatures, you see their army obviously, and so this is the whole reason why that we do this. Now, what you want to do is to create a new playfield. It just doesn't matter the name. It doesn't matter what you name it. Anything else. Just create a new playfield, a blank with no terrain on it at all. And the next thing you're going to do, of course you have the blank field, is you need to add some units to it. So what you need to do is go down to where the black arrow is and click on the little cross swords, and that's going to bring up your dialog box. Now if you set that as default, all of your units should be in that list. So if they're not in that list, you can even go back and hit change army and go select it again. You don't need to get out of the game to go do that. Anytime you need to, you can actually go get change army and have the ability to switch list or pull models out of other lists. All right, what you're going to do is you are going to at this point start picking units that you want to use. In this case, I think I've selected an Abyssal Guard troop, and you can see that the name appears in that little blocks right there, and that's also so that your opponent can see what that unit is called and maybe some other descriptive comments that you can put into that list. Now it's very limited as far as the number of characters, so a lot of times you have to use abbreviations, and that's as much as anything else just to remind you that that unit might have some sort of special ability. Alright, so this is the next step. What I do at this point is, if I'm going to put down that Abyssal Guard unit, and maybe I want to put something descriptive in there, all you have to do is type that, whatever you want in there. In this case, I have an imps upgrade, so I just put a comma imps. It could have been comma imps, comma brew of strength. It just depends on how many characters you have, or you might have BO strength. In just any way that you know to show your opponent or yourself what that unit particularly has. And once you type in the description that you want, simply hit place it, and that'll place the unit on the table. And people ask me, what happens if I place the wrong unit? It's easy. Just delete it, go back to the same step, and repeat it until you get it right. I've seen people do it 2 or 3 times just because they're messing around with stuff. But don't worry about it. I mean, once you do this step and you do this correctly, it will always be in your army this way if you're trying to save your list for the future. Okay, after you've hit place it, of course you'll see that it looks like it's placed in the exact center of the table by default. If you look in the bottom right hand corner, you should see your descriptive name. In this case it says Abyssal Guard, comma imps, and that way you know that you've successfully changed the name or made the description what you want it to be. Now what you're going to do is just continue to place units, change their name until you get your army deployed. My suggestion is deploy it fairly tight together. That's why the white circle there, that white circle doesn't mean anything. It's just to show you that I have placed the army kind of tight together, because when you deploy your army, it comes out the way that you left it on the table. In other words, if you deployed it on the bottom is one long line, that's what it's going to look like when you pop it back out there. So that's irritating sometimes when you have terrain and stuff in the way. So my suggestion is just kind of get your army in a nice, neat little package, a little formation, kind of off to the left or right center of the screen. It's not vital that you do this. Don't understand, it's not a critical error if you don't. But it just makes it easier when you deploy, that you're not looking for your units all over the table, especially individuals, which are really small dots on this type of game. After you do that, get everything out there you want, I want you to click on the little disc in the bottom right hand corner. Alright, the next thing you want to do is to hit the save. If you have a bunch of lists in here, you can actually go right back over the top of them, just rename them something else. But the first time, all you're going to have is this blue save dialog box, and I want you to click on that, and then we're going to name the army and get started. Alright, the next step is going to pop up, and it's going to ask if you want to save on this slot, and you think, why wouldn't I want to save? Well, the question is, if you've clicked on had a previous army and you want to override it, you can just select a different spot. But since this is your first time, of course you're going to want to save on this slot, because you have no other slots that are occupied. But if you get like me and you have like 20 army lists in there, it wants to ask you that, so to make sure that you're not going to overwrite one. The next thing it's going to do is ask you to name the army. It's important sometimes to give it some sort of descriptive name. Like I said, if you have 10 or 20 armies on here and you forget which one's which, you just have to keep opening them and looking for the one that you want, which is kind of a pain in the butt. What I try to do is, when I'm using Easy Army Builder, is I put the name here that I gave the army an Easy Army Builder, so that when I pull that sheet of paper up that says, in this case I'm looking at one that says 1995 Abyssals, I want that name to match the name of my army list in Easy Army Builder. It's just for quick location. Like I said, you want to go ahead and give the army a name, something descriptive, and then once you put the name of the army in, all you're going to do is follow what the red arrow says and click OK. Alright, so now you're ready to play somebody. You've got the table set, describe the field so that you know who you're playing and where. And so now you want to load your army in, and this is actually very, very easy now that we've got your army set up in this way. Simply click on the little floppy disk below in the bottom right hand corner, indicated by the white arrow. Alright, this is the dialog box you're going to get, and of course you can see all my armies listed in here. What you're going to do next is you're going to click on the Load tab. Anything you're going to save will be kind of this pinkish color, salmon color, but Load will change colors. Once you hit Load, you can see, which is where the white arrow is, you can see that the army list changes colors to, I guess, greenish, turquoise something, and you get your army list. Now, if you don't see it in there, there's actually a little draw bar on the right hand side indicated by the red arrow. You're just going to draw down to look for the list that you want to play, and then click on that list. Alright, so you'll notice that I'm going to the list I created a minute ago on the table called New Army. I'm going to click on it, and you're going to get a little loading circle for a second, and that should load the army onto the table. Again, it's going to give you another dialog box and ask if you're sure you want to load this slot. And if you want to play this army, obviously the answer is yes. Alright, what's going to happen after that, it's going to pop you back to the screen, and you'll notice in the upper left hand corner, there's my army all set up and ready to deploy. All I have to do now is just drag it or turn it or do whatever I want with it. So you can say that it's a whole lot better to do it this way. It saves just a lot of time. It also saves surprises, because if you're coming off the list every time, you're pulling them off, you're changing the name of them. But this way, you know, if you'll click on those icons, they'll have everything. In other words, the unit that I selected before, you'll say Abyssal Guard, it'll say Imps, and you don't have to go back and retype everything every time. So once you get your army list made in Easy Army Builder or a good army list, then you want to go in, you know, one day when you have time, pick a blank room, create your army icons in there, give them their descriptions and stuff like that. And now all you're going to have to do is very quickly click on that disc at the bottom, load your army, and it's going to pop right onto the battlefield. And it works a charm. It's a lot of fun to sit there and build your armies, finding icons and stuff like that. I mean, it's not as fun as painting figures, but it is kind of cool that you can sit there and do this and play this game online, especially now during the pandemic. So, hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any questions, I'll put my email at the bottom, and you can definitely send me an email, and I will answer them as best I can.